There are many ways to play the Bounty Hunter class. Different builds lead to different playstyles, some are more effective than others, some are more fun than others, although I use the term fun very loosely simply because fun is a very subjective term. Some people argue that constantly shooting from a distance is boring, even though it's much more efficient and effective, and that going into melee is fun and cool. Fair enough, I say. It is fun and cool going melee. This game has the best melee design I've ever seen, to be honest. I find it insanely satisfying crushing skulls with a massive hammer. I mean, who doesn't, right? However, I prefer to reserve the melee combat for melee-oriented classes. If you enjoy killing stuff at melee, then play a melee class. It's as simple as that. Don't play a bounty hunter, and this by the way applies to pyromancer and huntsman as well, because if you're constantly going into melee with this class, then you're just not playing it right, at least not to its full potential. What I enjoy is sniping mobs from a distance, lining up several mobs and killing all of them with one shot, shooting mobs in the air, whether I'm the one in the air or the enemy is. My idea of fun is making my teammates' lives as easy and painless as possible. That's my challenge. Take other games such as World of Warcraft for example. Most people just tunnel vision and nuke a boss. I want to get the most DPS, screw everyone else. And they'll completely ignore ads that will make the healers' lives and in turn everyone else's a living nightmare. I'm the guy that's ready to kill any ads that spawn so my teammates don't suffer. The same concept can be applied here. If I don't kill the specials, elites, what have you, as soon as they spawn and from a distance and decide to wait for them to come to us so I can kill them at melee, then the entire team will most likely suffer. My sole objective is to relieve as much pain as possible. How do I achieve this? By selecting a build that is designed to kill everything as quickly, efficiently, and effectively as possible. Having said that, this guide is tailor fitted to my playstyle, which may not be for everyone, and that's fine. My playstyle is very aggressive and hardly ever using my melee weapon to reset blessed shots. You may ask yourselves, why not use a theoretically amazing game mechanic such as blessed shots? Well, in practice it just isn't as efficient as you'd think. Simply put, you just waste too much time alternating between your crossbow and your melee weapon. Think about it, when 98% of mobs are at a distance or running at you from a distance, it's just more effective to kill them while they're far away. Virtually everything will die before it even gets to the group. In any case, if anything does get to melee range, your teammates have better weapons and abilities than you to handle certain mobs. People have this obsession with arguing every detail. No, but if you get mobs at range, if you don't have this talent or this weapon or this property, you're gonna suffer. This is a team-based game. You are not in charge of doing everything amazingly yourself. For example, why would I focus on killing tough mobs with my melee weapon when there's a, I don't know, Slayer in the group or a Shade or even an Unchained with full overheat? If I want to be amazing at killing stuff at melee, then I'll just play Slayer or Shade, period. This build and playstyle in particular is built around the crossbow. You definitely will use the blessed shots mechanic more when playing with the repeater pistol and volley crossbow for example, since it's easier to run out of ammo in comparison to the crossbow. So you could say that those weapons are more oriented toward a hybrid build. However, if you're not going to be one-shotting mobs with those weapons in any case, with or without blessed shots, then what's the point of playing with anything but the crossbow at this time? You can justify their use if your primary intention is to kill bosses faster, since they are, without a doubt, better weapons for bosses. From my point of view, and in my opinion, the melee weapon is for defensive purposes and to help out with, for example, a Chaos Warrior or two, since the crossbow doesn't do anything to Chaos Warriors while Blessed Shots is on cooldown. I usually go for the most efficient build and playstyle, and on top of all that, it just so happens to be the most fun for me. Okay, so for the talents, as you can see here, your passive ability is Blessed Shots, guaranteed range critical hit every 10 seconds or on melee kills. Now I mentioned at the beginning in my playstyle section, I rarely go at melee to kill a mob to reset my Blessed Shots because I waste too much time doing that. However, you are still, regardless of that, guaranteed a range critical hit every 10 seconds. And this is absolutely amazing because with a crit, you're basically guaranteed to one-shot every single mob, except for Chaos Warriors, of course. Unless you hit them with your career skill, which is locked and loaded, Victor fires a powerful shot that pierces enemies. With this, you can one-shot Chaos Warriors. Okay, so for the first tier, you've got Swift Load to select from, Make Them Count, reduces ranged weapon spread by 25%, and Vicious Virtue increases attack speed by 5%. Useless because you're a ranged class. You're gonna be shooting your ranged weapon all the time, pretty much. So why would you want to hit faster with your melee weapon? In my opinion, this is pretty useless. Make Them Count, you're not really going to be using this ever. This is the most obvious choice and the correct one. Swift Reload increases reload speed by 20%. Remember, you're firing with your ranged weapon, regardless of which ranged weapon you're using. Could be the repeater pistol, could be the volley crossbow, could be the normal crossbow, it doesn't matter. The important thing is that you reload as quickly as possible to continue shooting and killing. Okay, so for the second tier, Leave None Behind increases revive speed by 30%. If you're using this talent and strongly believe in it, then you should probably reconsider your life choices. Necessary means gain 25% increased power when out of ammunition. First of all, with the normal crossbow, you really shouldn't be going out of ammo. There is a chance you can run out of ammo, but it's rare. And secondly, even if you do run out of ammo, 25% increases power. You're gonna be hitting harder with your melee hits. I guess that's cool, but in practice, it's not really worthwhile. Crippling Strike is the best option. Increases the power boost of critical hits by 25%. I mean, when you're critting, you want to hit harder. It's just all round better. This applies to everything from your melee weapon to your ranged weapon. It doesn't matter. More damage is always better. Okay, so for the third tier, this is a bit trickier, except for Pious Fervor. Never ever use this. If you're using this, again, same answer as Leave None Behind. Cruel Fortune or Prize Bounty. If you're using your repeater pistol or the volley crossbow, this is probably a better choice since it's easier to run out of ammo, but every 10 seconds you're guaranteed a crit and you don't consume that ammo. So that's a pretty good, especially if you're hitting bosses, since if there's a boss, you generally won't be able to reset your blessed shots because you'll just be fighting the boss by itself. There won't generally be ads around. However, if you're using the normal crossbow, it's pretty difficult to run out of ammo in general, so it doesn't really matter much if you have Prize Bounty activated. Cruel Fortune is probably better because you're getting blessed shots faster. I mean, pretty much 30% faster than normal. So that's always amazing. For the fourth tier, critical hits grant temporary health. No, because you're going to be one-shotting most things anyway, so you don't really care about critical hits. What you care about is kills. You want to be granted temporary health when you kill stuff, and you're going to be killing a lot of stuff. So you definitely want to go for Righteous Zeal. Purifier, I don't know, I have to keep repeating this in every guide I do. I don't know why this still exists. Don't ever use this, ever. And for the last tier, you could go for either Encore or Double Shotted. I guess there's an argument for going for Encore, reduces the cooldown by 30%, but it's just more effective, in my opinion, to go with Double Shotted. With this, you can fire your weapon from really far away. You can spot a Chaos Warrior from really far away, you can shoot them from that distance and you will one-shot them. With Encore, you have a faster cooldown, but when you fire, everything gets really smoky around you. You can't see anything, you don't even know what you've hit pretty much, and you have to hit from close range. This is more focused, powerful, and more effective, in my opinion. You have 5 melee weapons to choose from. You've got the axe, the falchion, the flail, the rapier, and the two-handed sword. Two-handed sword I'm just going to discard automatically because as it is right now, it's not working very well and it's just pretty terrible all around. So realistically, you're just left with 4 options. The flail is pretty cool. It's got fast attack speed, but I would reserve the flail mostly for the zealot. I wouldn't really use it much on this character, on the bounty hunter. Rapier is a good choice. It's worth considering. The one-handed axe is on one hand great because it's got some excellent armor piercing, so for tough mobs like Chaos Warriors, it doesn't matter where you hit them, you're still going to do damage to them, as opposed to the falchion where you have to hit them on the head to actually do damage to them. The problem with the axe is that for hordes, if you get surrounded, it's terrible for horde clearing. Whereas the falchion, it's fast, it's versatile, and you can get out of a tricky situation if you get surrounded by normal mobs. It's much easier to get out of that situation as opposed to the axe. So all round, my option would be the falchion still, even though it was nerfed a little bit, but it's still excellent. It's good for everything. And as you can see, it's got headshot damage, so if you get a nice crit on a head, you can take like 40% of a Chaos Warrior's health just from one hit. It's fantastic all round. So as you can see, for properties, I'm using 2 stamina, 30% block cost reduction, and for the trait parry, timed blocks reduces stamina cost by 100%. As I mentioned at the beginning, for me the melee weapon is really a defensive item. I don't really whip it out a lot and start hacking and slashing at everything. I use it more to defend myself if we get surrounded and my team and I become overwhelmed. But even at melee, I generally use my ranged weapon. Most people use stamina on their necklace with the 20% health, but I would use that more in the case of melee oriented builds and classes where your melee weapon actually is a big part of your attack routine, because here you can roll properties that do more damage. However, in my case, for the Bounty Hunter, same as the Pyromancer, I'm using my melee weapon for protection. So I would much rather use 30% block cost reduction on my necklace with 20% health and 2 stamina with 30% block cost reduction instead of block angle, which is pretty useless in general. In total, I have 60% block cost reduction, which is pretty cool. And I've got parry, so if I get surrounded by a pretty threatening horde, such as storm vermin or just normal rats, I can block for a significant amount of time before I get out of the situation or I'm rescued and so on. For my ranged weapon, I'm using primarily crossbow all the time because right now it is just so much more powerful than the other 2 options. I say 2 options because brace of pistols isn't that great, generally speaking, whereas the repeater pistol and the volley crossbow are pretty good options all around. However, the crossbow is still just more powerful in general and more versatile. So as it stands now in this patch, the crossbow is the best all-round range weapon to use for the Bounty Hunter. Now I mentioned before that even at melee range, I still use my crossbow. And why do I do this? I know that the vast majority of people, even if there's a little horde or a few mobs coming at them, even if they're 10 meters away or 20 feet or whatever, they take out their melee weapon, they start blocking immediately. For me, this is really counterproductive. I'm a bit more aggressive when I play, so the reason why I use my ranged weapon even at melee, unless of course I have literally no option whatsoever, I'm completely overwhelmed, and in that case of course I have to use my melee weapon. That makes sense. However, if that's not the case, I will still prefer to use my ranged weapon because with one shot from my ranged weapon, I can pierce up to 5 normal enemies. Whereas with my melee weapon, it would take a lot more hits and longer to do the exact same action. So I'm going to kill more, meaning I'm not going to be overwhelmed as much, and I'm just killing more all round and clearing the area for us. There are basically 2 ways going about your properties for the Bounty Hunter, or at least 2 ideal ways of going about it. You could apply properties for chaos mobs in general, or you could apply properties for Skaven mobs in general. Now, if you go for Skaven, you would want to go Skaven armored on your ranged weapon and Skaven armored on your charm. However, I wouldn't fully recommend this unless you have both a red crossbow and a red charm. That way you can maximize your property rolls, and in that case you can guarantee the breakpoint when it comes to storm vermin. You can literally one-shot storm vermin. In that case, it could be worth it. However, if you don't reach that breakpoint, like I don't, as you can see I'm using an orange crossbow, I don't have any red crossbows, I'm going with the other style of play, which is going for full chaos mobs. So I'm going for chaos infantry on my crossbow and chaos infantry on my charm. Why would I do this? Well, very simple. With this I can one-shot, when I have blessed shots up, or when I crit in general, I can one-shot maulers, which are the big guys with the big axes. They're the second toughest mob in the game. But not only that, I can also one-shot any of the Chaos Marauder variants of mobs. And these guys, people don't give them much importance, but when you don't go with this type of build, it takes 2 to 3 shots to kill each one, and they can become a pain. But if you can one-shot them, and you can get a lot of these mobs in a horde or just in a pack, and they can become a pain to clear them. But with this build, you can literally one-shot them. Also for berserkers or savages, you can 2-shot them. You're never really going to one-shot them anyway. Your best case scenario is 2-shotting them. Also for sorcerers, they require 2 shots. Of course, remember, I'm referring to non-crits, because if you crit any of these mobs, you're going to one-shot them anyway. But you have to depend mostly on non-crits. For the non-crits, you're going to require 2 shots, but for the Chaos Marauders, they require only 1 shot even if it's not a crit. For sorcerers, you're always going to require 2 shots. Unless you hit them in the head, or you get a body crit, then you can one-shot them. If you have a red crossbow and a red charm, you could go for the Skaven armored combination, whereby you will one-shot storm vermin variants, any of them. You will one-shot ratling gunners, warp fire rats, and that's pretty much it in terms of difference between Chaos Infantry and Skaven Armored. It's always good to one-shot Rattling Gunners and Warp Fire Rats because obviously they pose a big threat, but even if you don't go with Skaven Armored, you can still crit them. If your Blessed Shots is up, you're gonna crit them regardless, and if you hit them on the body, you're gonna have to 2-shot them, which isn't the end of the world. Same with Storm Vermin and their variants. You're gonna be 2-shotting them unless, again, you have the guaranteed crit, or you just crit in general, you will one-shot them, or if you hit them on the head, you will one-shot one-shot them, but two-shotting Storm Vermin isn't the end of the world. As for the crossbow trait, I would definitely recommend Scrounger because as you can see in the talents, with Cruel Fortune, if you had Prize Bounty, there could be an argument for changing this for Hunter, for example. But remember that as a ranged or as a purely ranged build, you want to be spamming your ranged weapon constantly. So if you're recovering ammo when you fire and you get crits, and you're going to be critting quite a lot with a Bounty Hunter, then you won't be running out of ammo as much. So you'll be killing more stuff and faster. As I mentioned before, if you go for the volley crossbow, I would recommend in that case going for Prize Bounty, since it's easier to run out of ammo and you're not going to be using your ranged weapon as much as the normal crossbow. You're going to be hitting more at melee, and the volley crossbow is fantastic for bosses, but that's pretty much it. That's where it's better than the crossbow. But even the crossbow can hold its own. It's not too bad. Repeater pistol, pretty good for bosses. For everything else, not that great. Brace of pistols, it's just nowhere near the level of the normal crossbow. So there's just really no point in choosing this unless you're going for the cool factor because you might have fun with them or they're cool to you. But we're not really talking about that now. What we're talking about is the most effective build for the game. For my ranking, I would definitely rank the crossbow at number 1. Volley crossbow at number 2, repeater pistol at number 3, and brace of pistols number 4 if I include them really, because I would never really choose this option as they are right now. You run out of ammo pretty quickly and you're going to be depending on your melee weapon a lot. So again, you're wasting time going into melee. Just a couple of tips on how to take on Chaos Warriors. What you ideally want to do is shoot them at their head while Blessed Shots is active, and then you go into melee to help out your teammates to finish them off. When Blessed Shots is active, you're guaranteed crit. You're going to do damage to them, whether you hit them in the body or on the head. Of course, if you hit them on the head, you're going to do more damage. You're going to do about maybe 40% damage, and then you go in with your falchion and you start hitting them and smacking them on the head with heavy hits. For maulers, you always want to shoot at their stomach. Their heads are armored, so even if your Blessed Shots is active and you shoot them in the head, you're not going to be one-shotting them. You're going to do maybe 60% damage to their heads. But if you shoot them in the stomach while Blessed Shots is active, you're going to one-shot them. If you crit them on the stomach, you're going to one-shot them. If you don't crit and you hit them in the stomach anyway, you're going to two-shot them with this build. For the rest of the gear, for the necklace, 20% health, that's pretty much a must for every class, for every build. Here, like I mentioned before, I'm using 30% block cost reduction to stack it with 30% block cost reduction on my melee weapon. So 60% total, not too bad. As for the trade, I've gone with Healer's Touch, 25% chance to not consume healing item on use. This is fantastic because you can heal yourself. You might get the chance to not consume the actual healing item, and therefore you can heal somebody else. Of course, the other obvious option is Boon of Shalia, which is increases effectiveness of healing on you by 30%. This is an excellent option since this is also affected by your temporary health. So you're literally gaining 30% increased temporary health. So all around, this is fantastic. The difference is that I prefer to use this, generally speaking, because I don't always have issues with my health, and I would rather have the option or the chance of helping out somebody in my group if they're missing health. For charm, I've gone with power versus chaos, power versus infantry, exactly the same as my ranged weapon for the reasons I already explained. For the trait, I've gone with Decanter, increases the duration of potions by 50%. This is pretty good because you use your strength potion, you fire your ultimate while Blessed Shots is active, and then you just start nuking with your ranged weapon, and you do quite a lot of damage. In this last patch, 1.1.1, they actually fixed Concoction. Before, it wasn't receiving one of the effects, but now you're receiving all of the effects correctly. So this is a pretty good option, but I would still rather go with Decanter. As for the trinket, Curse Resistance, if you're running a team of friends or just a group of randoms, you're generally always going to be going for the Grims. And if you grab the Grims, you want to take a less of a damage hit. So that's why you want to use Curse Resistance. And of course, I'm using 5% crit chance, which is quite good for most builds anyway. But Bounty Hunter is fantastic because, you know, you rely on crits a lot and you want to be critting a lot. So 5% crit chance is always good. For the trait, I've gone with Grenadier, 25% chance to not consume grenade on use. This is great. Like I explained in my last guide for the Huntsman, you might have a grenade, you might throw it in the middle of a Chaos Patrol or a Storm Vermin Patrol, and you might proc and still keep your grenade. So you throw another grenade in, and you might get another grenade. I've managed to have 4 grenades in total, so you can pretty much destroy an entire patrol by yourself. The other obvious option is shrapnel. Grenades cause hit enemies to take 20% increased damage for 10 seconds. This is fantastic, but generally only against bosses. So you throw your grenade, and for the next 10 seconds the boss is receiving 20% extra damage. Generally, I will always prefer Grenadier, because it just gives you a few more options in general throughout the run. Well, that's it. I know it's a pretty long video, I have to say, for a guide. I'm sorry about that. There was a lot to go through. I'll try to keep it shorter in the future, but this game just has so much stuff to go through, so many options. They're all great in their own way. Some are better than others. I don't know. It's fantastic. What can I say? I hope you found it helpful. It would be great if you actually tried it out. If you tried the playstyle out, let me know in the comments below. Let me know how it goes. Is it too hard to play? Is it too easy? I would love to know, honestly. I'm also thinking about the next class I'll be playing. I'm not too sure yet. If you have any suggestions, let me know in the comments below. And once again, thank you everyone so much for your support. I'm having a lot of fun making these videos, and I look forward to uploading more videos, of course. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.